Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The lie you inherited. From the moment you first opened your eyes to the world, you were already surrounded by silent lessons. Lessons you never asked for, but which were planted in you nonetheless. Somewhere between the voices of parents, the rules of school, and the endless comparisons of society, a poisonous idea began to grow: you are not enough. It didn't arrive as a declaration you could challenge. No one sat you down and explained it logically. Instead, it crept in through the side doors of your mind, through sighs of disappointment, through the praise given to someone else instead of you, through the cutting remark that seemed harmless to others but pierced your young heart like a blade. It came through glances, silence, and subtle comparisons that told you again and again, you are lacking. This belief didn't sprout from your true nature. You weren't born with it. No child enters the world hating themselves. You were taught to do so. And like all teachings, it can feel so normal, so ordinary, that you mistake it for truth. The invisible construction. We live in a culture that thrives on convincing people that they are flawed. Every institution, family, school, media, even friendships, participates in shaping this invisible prison. As a child, you absorbed the notion that your value must be measured, tested, and proven. Each grade in school, each comparison to a sibling, each advertisement on television whispered, "You are not yet enough." What happens to a young mind repeatedly told, directly or indirectly, that who they are is insufficient? At first, they resist. Children naturally have a spark, a wild belief in possibility. But constant exposure wears them down. Little by little, they stop believing in their natural worth and begin to adopt the narrative offered to them: there is something fundamentally wrong with me. Adler's revelation. Alfred Adler, one of psychology's great pioneers, saw through this construction long before it was fashionable to question it. He argued that feelings of inferiority were not natural defects, they were created. They were the byproducts of comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and failures treated not as lessons but as permanent evidence of inadequacy. To Adler, this was not a trivial observation. It was a revelation. If inferiority is learned, then it is not destiny. If it is constructed, then it can be deconstructed. The poison of comparison. Think about how comparisons shaped you. Perhaps you remember hearing, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" or "She always does better than you." Perhaps you recall the silent disappointment when your best efforts still fell short of someone else's standard. Each small incident might have seemed insignificant on its own, but together they formed a poisonous narrative that burrowed into your self-image. The tragedy is not just in the words themselves, but in the way they become part of your identity. Instead of saying, "I made a mistake," you begin to think, "I am a mistake." Instead of saying, "I didn't succeed this time," you begin to think, "I am a failure." And once you carry that belief, you live in chains. A prison not of your making. This is the cruelest part: the prison was not built by you, but only you can dismantle it. The bars were forged by society, yet you are the one who holds the key. So long as you continue to treat this inherited belief as if it were your own, you remain trapped in a lie that robs you of your power. Adler's brilliance was in showing us that this prison is not permanent. The same society that told you you were not enough can be unmasked. The curtain of illusion can be torn down. But before that happens, you must recognize the lie for what it is. The call to rebellion. This chapter is a beginning, not an end. It is the moment when the illusion is named and stripped of its invisibility. You were not born broken. You were not destined to be less than others. What you feel is not proof of inadequacy, it is the weight of a belief forced upon you. The time has come to stop fighting against yourself and start fighting alongside yourself. You are not your enemy. The lie is. The truth is simple, as long as you believe you are less, the world will treat you as such. But once you see through the deception, once you stop carrying the burden that never belonged to you, you can begin the process of transformation. You did not create the lie. But you can be the one who destroys it. How inferiority takes root. Every child arrives in the world fragile and dependent. Compared to the vastness of life, their smallness is undeniable. They need protection, guidance, and care. This sense of being little, of not yet being capable, is not a curse, it is natural. Adler believed that it is precisely this recognition of limitation that sparks the desire to grow. To look up at the adults who walk confidently, to stumble while learning to run, to fumble while grasping words, all of these experiences contain within them the seed of human greatness. The tension between who we are now and who we could become is the silent engine of progress. Without it, no child would ever learn to walk, no student would push to understand, no dreamer would dare to create. It is this awareness of imperfection that fuels the journey toward possibility. But this beautiful impulse is fragile. It is easily poisoned. And this is where the tragedy of the inferiority complex begins. From spark to wound. Imagine a child who tries to draw, proudly offering their scribbles, only to be met with laughter or cold silence. Imagine another who struggles with numbers, compared mercilessly to a sibling who excels. Imagine the young athlete told, "You'll never be good enough," after stumbling in practice. At first, these moments sting but do not destroy. But repetition transforms them into something darker. Slowly, the child begins to think, "It's not that I failed at this task, it's that I am a failure." What was once a spark for growth now becomes a wound, an open cut that never fully heals. This is how the healthy recognition of limitation mutates into the belief that something is fundamentally wrong with one's very being. The role of family. Adler observed that families, often without realizing it, play a central role in this transformation. A parent's unspoken frustration, an unfair comparison between siblings, or even excessive demands placed on a child plant the seeds of inadequacy. Phrases like, "Why can't you be like your sister?" or "You never do anything right," may sound like discipline to the adult, but to the child they echo as truths etched into identity. Even silence, when a child longs for recognition and receives none, becomes a cruel teacher. Parents do not set out to harm. Often, they themselves are repeating what was once done to them. Yet intention does not erase impact. Each careless word adds another brick to the wall of inferiority. The role of school. If the family is where the seeds are planted, school is often where they are watered. The very structure of education is built on comparison. Report cards, test scores, class rankings, athletic competitions, every measure tells the child their worth is conditional. The uniqueness of personality, creativity, sensitivity, or courage matters little in a system obsessed with numbers. You are not seen for who you are judged by how well you fit into a cold metric. And when you fall short, the lesson is reinforced, you are less. Instead of cultivating growth, failure becomes a mark of shame. Instead of saying, "You can improve," the system whispers, "You are behind." And soon enough, the child no longer separates action from identity. They no longer think, "I failed this test." They think, I am a failure. From mistakes to identity. This shift, from mistakes being part of life to mistakes becoming identity, is the cruelest corruption of the inferiority complex. The child internalizes the belief that there is something permanently broken inside them. And once that belief takes root, it begins to shape behavior. Adler described it as a vicious cycle. The more inadequate a person feels, the more they avoid challenges. The more they avoid challenges, the more proof they gather of their supposed incapacity. Each missed opportunity becomes fuel for the conviction that they were never meant to succeed. Inferiority feeds evasion. Evasion feeds inferiority. Slowly, the human being shrinks into a caricature of what they could have been. The self-perpetuating cycle. A child who grows into adolescence carrying this weight learns to hide. They mask their vulnerabilities at all costs. They sabotage themselves when success is near, fearing exposure. They reject opportunities that might reveal their limitations. And each time they do, the story deepens. I am incapable. I am less. I am not enough. This is the prison of the inferiority complex. And once inside, it feels endless. The first key. Yet Adler did not see this as destiny. He recognized that if inferiority is learned, it can also be unlearned. If the narrative was imposed, it can also be rewritten. The first step is awareness, the recognition that this belief is not truth, but conditioning. Before you can break free, you must pause and ask yourself, what was I taught about who I am? What beliefs still whisper in my mind, long after childhood has ended? Because only when you see how the roots were planted can you begin to pull them out. The machinery that profits from your pain. If childhood is the soil where the seeds of inferiority are planted, then society is the gardener that waters them, prunes them, and ensures they grow strong enough to choke the life out of self-worth. What begins in the home and school does not fade when we step into adulthood, it intensifies. And it does so because the world you live in has no interest in your liberation. In fact, it depends on your insecurity to survive. From the earliest days of schooling, you were thrown into systems designed to reinforce the idea that you are lacking. The constant measurement, the endless comparisons, the grading scales and rankings, these were not temporary lessons. They were the first laboratory of systematic self-doubt. By the time you left childhood behind, you had already learned that your worth would forever be measured against invisible rulers. The culture of comparison. Society thrives on comparison. It tells you not simply to be, but to be better, better than your classmates, your co-workers, your neighbors, even your own past self. It whispers that your value is conditional, always tied to a higher number, a better rank, or a shinier appearance. Every time you see a report card, a performance review, a sports competition, or even the curated perfection of a social media post, the same message echoes, you are not yet enough. What's worse, even your victories are fleeting. Achieve one goal, and a new standard rises before you. The ruler is always moving, and you are always behind. Media, the factory of lack. The media, which could have been a tool to broaden your understanding of the world, has instead become a factory of unattainable ideals. Advertisements bombard you with images of flawless bodies, luxury lifestyles, and smiling faces that seem forever out of reach. Movies and social feeds present highlight reels of perfection, leaving you to wonder why your life looks so ordinary in comparison. The goal is not to inform or to inspire, it is to create desire. And desire is born from a carefully nurtured sense of lack. The more you feel you are missing something, the more you will consume. Do you feel inadequate? Buy clothes to project confidence. Do you feel insecure? Sign up for the latest personal success program. Do you feel unattractive? Change your body, your skin, your face. The message is relentless. There is always something wrong with you, but don't worry, we have something to sell that will fix it. Of course, the promised relief never comes. And so the cycle repeats. Dissatisfaction leads to consumption, consumption leads to disappointment, and disappointment drives even deeper dissatisfaction. It is a machine, and you are the fuel. Performance as identity. This culture seeps into relationships as well. Friendships and even family ties become silent contracts of validation. You are loved if you succeed. You are valued if you meet expectations. You are seen only when you play the role society has assigned to you. And so, you learn to perform. To wear masks. To show only the parts of yourself that are acceptable and hide the rest. Vulnerability becomes dangerous. Failure becomes shameful. Authenticity becomes impossible. Even suffering, once private, is turned into performance. Social media has created a strange new arena where even pain must be curated, shared, and compared. You are not only measuring your achievements, you are measuring your sadness, your struggles, your recovery. Nothing belongs fully to you anymore, everything becomes content for others to judge. By design, not by chance. This may sound cruel, but it is the truth. The feeling of being less is not an accident. It is engineered. Entire industries depend on you believing you are not enough. Economies thrive on your insecurity. The machine is not broken, it was built this way. And as long as you continue to live within it unconsciously, the inferiority complex will never release you. Because every billboard, every scrolling feed, every subtle interaction is designed to remind you, you are still lacking. Adler's rupture. But Adler, once again, pointed to a radical rupture. He argued that the way out is not to win the game of comparison, but to stop playing it altogether. The goal is not to become better in the eyes of others, it is to transcend the very framework that measures you against them. True liberation begins when you recognize the machinery for what it is, a system that profits from your self-doubt. And once you see the mechanism, you can no longer be trapped by it. A glimpse toward freedom. Up until now, your sense of inadequacy has been sustained not only by childhood wounds but by a society that reinforces them daily. But knowing how the machine operates gives you a choice: continue to feed it, or step outside of its rules. The next step, as Adler revealed, is not denial of inferiority, but the transformation of it. Inferiority can become either a chain or a ladder. And in the next chapter, we will explore how this shift, what Adler called compensation, can turn wounds into the very fuel for greatness. The turning point: compensation and acceptance. For centuries, psychology leaned toward the idea that human beings were victims of their past, prisoners of trauma, fate, or inner flaws. But Alfred Adler dared to break with this tradition. He saw something others overlooked. Within the feeling of inferiority lies not only the source of pain, but also the seed of power. Adler believed that the recognition of one's own inadequacy, if confronted honestly, could be transformed into a driving force for greatness. What matters is not the existence of weakness, but the way you respond to it. This was the essence of his concept of compensation. Inferiority as fuel. Every human being feels small at some point. The child who cannot keep up with their peers, the student who stumbles over lessons, the adult who fails in love or career, all experience the sting of being less. For most, this sting becomes shame. But Adler saw that it could become energy. Compensation, in his vision, is the act of using perceived weakness as a ladder towards strength. A child born physically frail may channel that frustration into extraordinary intellectual achievements. Someone ridiculed for shyness may grow into a powerful speaker who understands the value of words. A soul once rejected may become deeply empathetic, building bonds others cannot. The wound itself becomes the starting point for transformation. You do not erase it, you use it. The trap of false superiority. Yet Adler also warned of a dangerous detour. Many people, unable to face their feelings of inadequacy directly, choose instead to hide them beneath masks of superiority. They chase status, power, money, and approval. On the outside, they may appear confident and successful. But inside, the wound remains untouched, festering beneath the surface. This path is seductive because society applauds it. Climb higher, win more, gain recognition, and people will assume you've conquered your demons. But Adler argued that this is not victory, it is avoidance. Each achievement only deepens the fear of being exposed, each success adds pressure to keep the mask intact. The emptiness grows, because nothing external can ever fill the void of a wound denied. In truth, it is not inferiority itself that destroys us. It is the way we choose to deal with it. The courage to face the wound. To transform inferiority into strength, Adler insisted on one prerequisite: courage. The courage to stand before your reflection and admit your vulnerabilities without shame. The courage to say, yes, I am limited here, but that does not mean I am worthless. This act of acknowledgement is radical because it goes against everything society teaches. The world tells you to cover your scars, to hide your doubts, to present only polished perfection. But Adler's wisdom insists, liberation begins where pretense ends. When you face your wound directly, it loses its power to define you. You stop living as a victim of it and begin using it as a foundation for growth. Acceptance as transformation. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It does not mean lowering your head and giving up. It means integrating your flaws into your sense of self and refusing to see them as proof of failure. Think of it this way: a cracked vessel is not useless, it can carry water just the same, and sometimes, through the cracks, light enters. Your vulnerabilities are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you are human. Adler believed that only when you embrace this totality, your strengths and weaknesses alike, can you walk the path of true development. The goal is not to become flawless. The goal is to become whole. Breaking the cycle of self-hatred. As long as you believe you are a defect to be corrected, every attempt at improvement will be poisoned. You will run faster, not out of love for growth, but out of hatred for yourself. You will climb higher, not to explore your potential, but to silence the voice that says you are less. This cycle cannot lead to peace. It leads only to exhaustion. The turning point comes when you reject the belief that you are fundamentally wrong. When you stop fighting against yourself and start walking alongside yourself. This is not empty self-help. It is the foundation for profound transformation. A new path forward. Adler's insight shatters the illusion that your worth depends on perfection or approval. You are not required to erase your wounds before you can live fully. You are required only to accept them, to see them as raw material from which strength can be built. Inferiority can be a chain, or it can be a ladder. The choice is yours. And as you begin to climb, another question arises: how do you sustain this transformation in practice? How do you move from acknowledgement and acceptance into a life of true healing? That is the next step on this journey. Walking out of the prison, healing and rebuilding. The inferiority complex is not just a wound, it is a prison. Its walls are built from childhood comparisons, its bars forged by society's endless demands, its locks sealed by your own acceptance of the lie that you are not enough. But prisons, no matter how solid, are not natural. They are built. And what has been built can be dismantled. Adler believed that healing was not about repeating shallow affirmations or pretending the wound no longer exists. Healing begins with a radical act of responsibility, refusing to live as a victim of your past. You are not to blame for the scars you carry, but you are responsible for what you choose to do with them now. Step 1. Taking back responsibility. It is tempting to look backward and point to the moments that shaped your insecurity, the parents' harsh words, the teacher's dismissive glance, the relentless advertisements of a culture built on comparison. And yes, those things harmed you. They planted seeds. They stole innocence. But if you remain chained to blame, you remain chained to powerlessness. Healing begins when you say, "The story from today forward belongs to me." The world may have taught you to hate yourself, but you have the authority to unlearn. Responsibility here is not guilt. It is freedom. It is the choice to rebuild yourself, brick by brick, without waiting for apology, permission, or approval. Step 2. Refusing comparison. The inferiority complex thrives in the shadows of comparison. As long as you measure yourself against others, you feed it. There will always be someone taller, smarter, richer, more celebrated. The game is unwinnable because it was never designed to be won. Walking out of the prison means refusing to play. Your mission is not to be better than. Your mission is to be whole. To live fully within your own skin, honoring both strength and weakness without apology. When you stop glancing sideways and start looking inward, the prison bars begin to loosen. Step 3. Finding purpose beyond the self. Adler proposed something even more radical. The true antidote to inferiority lies not in endless self-focus, but in genuine connection. Human beings are social creatures, and yet the inferiority complex isolates us, turning life into a lonely contest. Healing requires a shift of focus. Not, how do I appear, but, how can I contribute? Not, am I enough, but, what meaning can I create in the lives of others? When your life becomes about purpose, about sharing, helping, creating impact, the grip of self-doubt weakens. The wound still exists, but it no longer commands your attention. The spotlight shifts from your deficiencies to your contributions. In giving yourself to something larger, you begin to discover freedom. The courage to rebuild. Awareness of these steps is not enough. You cannot simply know the way out, you must walk it. And this demands courage. Courage to leave behind the old identity, even if it has been with you for years. Courage to face the emptiness that comes when you drop the masks of performance. Courage to step into the unknown of living authentically. Think of it as rebuilding a house after tearing down rotten walls. The demolition is frightening, but only through it can a stronger foundation be laid. The process is not glamorous. It is slow, messy, often lonely. But every brick laid with intention is a declaration, I am free. I am whole. I am no longer chained by the lie. Freedom is a daily choice. The prison doors swing open not once, but every day. Each morning you choose, will I feed the old narrative of deficiency, or will I step into the truth of my worth? Each interaction, each challenge, each failure is a chance to reinforce freedom or slip back into chains. Healing is not a single triumph. It is a rhythm, a discipline, a daily rebellion against the machinery that profits from your pain. But with each act of responsibility, each refusal of comparison, each step toward purpose, the walls grow weaker until they crumble. Returning to yourself. In the end, the goal is not to become someone else. It is to return to what you already were before the world convinced you otherwise. A child with potential. A human with flaws and strengths woven together. A being who does not need to be fixed but only to be understood and lived authentically. The inferiority complex taught you to shrink. Healing teaches you to expand. The lie told you to hide. Freedom tells you to stand. No one can walk this path for you. But every step you take is proof that the prison is not eternal. You were not born broken. You were born to rebuild. And now, the choice is yours.